Ed Smart, father of Elizabeth Smart, advocate for missing and exploited children, and perhaps LGBTQ advocate going forward. Thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
You bet. Great to be here with you, Bob.
How has the work of advocating for missing and exploited children changed over the past 17 years since your daughter was abducted and then ultimately recovered?
You know, I think it has improved so much. It's, to me, that's really remarkable. I think back on those times when I heard law enforcement and, say, the Salt Lake Police Department and the FBI supposedly working together. I will never forget one of my dear friends in law enforcement saying, "Ed, you won't believe this, but we've never worked so well together." And I thought, heaven help us if that's the case, because every time I met with them and I asked them questions, one of them didn't know what the other one was doing, yet they would share information by way of a DVD, and I just thought, how does the most important information get communicated? And so I think we've seen a huge change in how all of law enforcement will come together and work, whether it's on a CART team or, the Amber Alert. It continually becomes more and more refined, and I think we've just come a long, long ways.
In the 17 years since your daughter was abducted, and as you look back at the experience as a whole, the effort to find her, what have you identified as positives and what have you identified as negatives that came out of that whole episode?
I think the positives is it really reinforced the Amber Alert or the Rachel Alert as it was that morning.
Yeah.
And in the way that can function, I think that when you look at missing children, really the public is our greatest resource. And when we have a coordinated effort focused on this is what we need you to look for, children can be rescued and, there can be happy endings. So I think that's huge. I think that we learn about a number of deficits that are still out there. For example, I think about the internet crimes against children. It's such a horrendous issue and a problem that I still think we don't have under control at all. And that, included with missing children, you've got this segment of abuse. And I think that that's an area that we're going to need to focus on because the two kind of work together. When I was heading up this Surviving Parents Coalition, we had a woman join whose daughter had been abused by her father. And it was horrific. And in the end, there was divorce, there was the father went to jail, and it was a very sad, sad story. And I think that we don't understand what kind of goes on behind the scenes and making the public more aware. I think the more we can talk about abuse, the more we can talk about abductions, not that we need to dwell on it, but we need to be aware of the issues out there. And by being aware of it, we can keep our eyes open for different indicators that might tell us what's happening in a child's life, especially one that might seem disturbed.
I went back and looked at several of the news conferences that were held back when Elizabeth was taken. And it was interesting that they mentioned a website. I think it was elizabethsmart.com at the time. And that was considered an innovative element to the investigative process in looking for her. Now we have social media. Talk to me about the impact that social media has now on advocating for missing and exploited children.
Social media is huge. I mean, it just really helps to allow people to talk about what they know, what they don't know, ideas about the issue. I think that there's so much more information that comes about because of social media, and people seem so much more engaged in social media than in almost any other area of media. That's good and bad. in a way, it allows them to speak out without, remaining kind of anonymous. So they might say things that are inappropriate or really insensitive. But on the other hand, it does allow information to flow that can give law enforcement indication of, potential leads or tips that might not otherwise be there.
To this day, people marvel at your daughter Elizabeth's strength and her ability to not just move on with her life, but to actually leverage what happened to her into something incredibly positive, and in fact not allowing what happened to her to actually define her, but to propel her forward in doing good in society. How do you account for Elizabeth's incredible internal strength?
As a young woman, young girl, when we would go out hiking, she was always there at the front. We had this cabin. It had a water holding tank, and we would occasionally need to go down there and clean it out. And when the boys were afraid of it, she was anxious to show them up and hop down there and clean it out. So, she was going to say, look at me. And she is a strong woman. I think that, certainly her mother has had a lot to do with that. I think that we both have kind of brought different things to the table that have strengthened it. But Elizabeth is really remarkable. I remember thinking, I kept on hearing these different comments from psychiatrists and others saying, well, just wait until she gets married, then she's going to have all these problems, or this or that reason for her to have a downturn and a problem. And I just thought, how dare you? This is someone who has survived something that is more horrific than anything out there, and she is taking life and she's moving forward with it. So I couldn't be more proud of her.
It is remarkable to me the wisdom of your now ex-wife's advice to Elizabeth on the night that she came home, in that, sweetheart, don't give them another second of your time. Move on with your life. In essence, saying the greatest revenge is living well.
Right.
Has Elizabeth been able to do that? It appears like she has.
I absolutely think she has. I think she has made the most of everything that she could do, and tries to be mindful of people and be helpful where she can be.
For the past 17 years, your family's narrative has surrounded missing and exploited children. Everybody knows the story of Elizabeth Smart and her miraculous return to your family. Now, though, with you coming out as gay, that public narrative has changed. How do you feel about that?
I'm hoping that it doesn't change the goodness that we continue to want to do. And I don't know. I don't know how, people perceive, gays differently. And it was a long journey for me to finally come to the point of accepting myself as being gay. My wife asked me almost 4 years ago, was I gay? And I said, what does that mean? And I said, have I been faithful to you? Yes. Am I attracted to men? Yes. And I've dealt with that my whole life. And and I tried to do my best. I didn't want to see my family, break up. And I wanted more than anything to be able to see a way forward. And I tried to. I started going to the temple 3 and 4 times a week. And at one point I said to my wife, I said, I wish that I could die right now. Not that I was suicidal, but I just said, I feel like I could give a good accounting to the Lord of myself. And it was, shortly after that time that I really had a change in my belief. And where...
How so? What was that change?
I had been very involved in the temple, and having gone there 3 to 4 times a week for a couple of years. I was down in San Diego speaking, and I went to the San Diego temple, and as I came out, I thought to myself, I took this selfie, and I thought, the first time I went through, I had a very difficult experience. And I thought to myself as I stood there, having had that experience just prior to going on my mission, and I really wanted to go on that mission badly. And I thought, I really don't have an option. I have to go through the temple. And so I did. And I went on my mission, and I had a wonderful experience. And anyway, this day, I thought, I really need to investigate more. And I really need to understand more than what I do. And
in terms of?
In terms of the temple, what it's all about, why, where it originated from. Right. And I can point to that day as being a defining moment in my life where things started to change. And my father, just before he passed away, he had given each of us a copy of A Rough Stone Rolling by Richard Bushman. And I, started kind of looking at the temple and the information. And as I got back to Salt Lake from visiting my mother in Palm Springs, I started reading it cover to cover. And I found myself questioning what I personally thought I knew. I mean, what my testimony was. And I came to this point where I thought, some of the things that I've believed my whole life, I no longer believed. I just...
Such as?
Such as, Joseph Smith translating the Book of Mormon. I thought, this translation occurred this way, and that is the directive that I had received from the church my whole life. Mm-hmm. And when I, understand that the majority of it was looking at a rock in a hat, not, this other way, I'm sitting there, okay, well, I guess I could accept that perhaps that was revelation mm-hmm. versus translation, but he certainly wasn't translating. And that, and polygamy, and blacks in the priesthood, and all of these things that were, supposedly inspired, I found them not to be. And I found myself in a point of being irreconcilable. I mean, Lois and I have served an inner city mission up until this past January even. Mm. And I love doing that. I love the people. I've had such a wonderful experience with so many people in the church, and I love them. And I've loved so many of the leaders of the church. But my feeling, my testimony inside changed, and I'm not trying to say that to have anybody else change theirs, but that was what I experienced. And I kept on going to the temple, and I kept on praying, and I kept on reading the Book of Mormon and doing a number of things to try to reconcile myself, and I couldn't. And I had been struggling with this being gay or same-sex attraction, as some people want to call it, for years and years, and I had not acted on it, and I just the shame and the guilt kind of kept me in check. I just couldn't do that. And as I got to this point of being irreconcilable, I found myself thinking, the problem that I have is that I am gay and I'm trying to be straight. And that is what is really the biggest problem. And
is that what informed then your change in testimony? And
no, my change in testimony occurred. That that change enabled me to finally come to the realization of myself.
Explain how.
A lot of people want to say, well, Ed, you chose to leave the church so you could live a gay lifestyle. And that is absolutely not true.
Is Lois one of them who feels that way?
I don't know what Lois feels. I mean, Lois should have seen me, go to the temple 3 and 4 times a week, and try to do the things that I thought were going to reconcile me, that would, put me in a good place. So I think that she has to at least acknowledge that I was trying, that I was really making an effort to be the best person that I could be. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect by any means, but I mean, I came to this point, and that point was very difficult. I mean, I had never, as I've said in some interviews, I've never wanted to be gay. I didn't want to own that. I did not. I mean, during Elizabeth's ordeal, that was the last thing on earth that I wanted to be known for.
In fact, you have said in other interviews that you were actually homophobic.
Absolutely. I wanted to basically stay away from it as much as possible. Absolutely.
In previous interviews, you have talked about actually being homophobic.
Right.
And in doing so, were you able to separate that part of yourself enough to the point where you felt like you could continue on as a straight man, actually being gay?
I tried to do that. I mean, I wanted to do that. That was what I remember, 3 or 4 years ago, coming back from a really difficult, when she asked me if I was gay, and I'm just sitting there. I went to my church leaders, I went to the stake president, I went to a number of therapists, and tried to do that, and tried to find a way of fixing myself. And as I would go off to therapy, Lois said to me, "Well, I'm going to retail therapy," and I just thought, you really don't understand, you don't get that I'm really truly struggling, and I don't think she ever appreciated that or ever understood what I was going through.
Certainly, your wife's, as you are describing, your wife's lack of truly understanding what you're going through, and the struggle that you were going through is pervasive in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where many people to this day still believe that being gay is a choice, and you can just choose to not do it if that's what you really wanted to do.
And, that's what I tried to do. That is what I really, really tried to do. But I'm sorry to say that, there may be a few people that somehow do that. Going to the temple was my conversion therapy, or my reparative therapy, to try to keep myself, to find some peace. That is what it's really all about, is finding peace. And I really felt like I did my best, and I tried that, and I thought I was even there. And then when I came to this point of truly coming to the point where I could no longer believe what I did, I just, it was
kind of a cascade.
It was
really.
a very cascading effect. It just was like I had, some very difficult feelings, conflict inside. I felt mad. I felt upset. I think that there is such a lack of understanding about, what if you want to call it same-sex attraction or gay or whatever the terminology is out there, I feel like people really don't understand unless they have it, that they know what they're dealing with and how, how difficult it is at times. It wouldn't necessarily mean that it's there all the time in your face, but that it is there, and it is, something that becomes problematic and very, very difficult.
Let's go back to that conversation finally, and I believe it was about a year ago that you had with Lois.
Right.
Tell me then, when she asked you about a year ago now whether you were gay,
Yes.
you finally answered yes.
I did.
What precipitated that?
I had really come to a point, probably a year, it had been a while, understanding that I was gay and that this wasn't going away, that I couldn't change it, that I guess if you want to say that a person makes a choice as to whether they want to be miserable the rest of their life and live in this kind of nightmarish situation, or whether they, I looked at it in two different ways. I looked at it, one, I thought about myself, but I also thought about Lois, and people may not accept this, but how is Lois going to feel one where I don't feel the same about the church that I used to? That was kind of the glue that held us together. That, I think back on, during Elizabeth's ordeal, certainly our belief in God, we knew that there was only one person in control of the situation, and that was God. And that, everyone else was doing the best that they could, but he was really the only one that we knew in charge. And my belief in God and Christ have not changed. I truly, I could not deny what I've witnessed, what I've felt, how I've seen God's hand in my life. I could never, I'm hoping I could never deny that, because I feel very strongly about that, and I'm so grateful for that, because that is one thing that the church really helped to bring me to and to understand. And I feel like I've even come to a further point in understanding, God's love and Christ's sacrifice for us and His specific love for us. So I just feel like, I feel incredibly blessed. I really do. I feel horrible about what has happened. I feel, I'm totally responsible for the pain that I've caused in Lois and, in my children, and I'm so sorry for that. But it was something that I just felt that I could no longer, when I felt like I didn't have that glue holding us together, I just felt like I've got to be true to what I feel and what I know.
You had one of your church leaders, and I'm sure others, express the idea to you that how can you give up so much for so little?
Yes.
Tell me, as you have come out as gay,
Yes.
What have you gained from that? What have you lost in the process? And do they balance out?
Well, I've just come out, so I really can't tell you how that balancing act is going to be. Certainly I've lost the relationship that I had with Lois. And
do you two talk at all?
I'm hoping that time will heal things. It's just really hard. I still care, very much for her. I want her to be happy.
I sense that this is excruciating for both of you.
It is. It is.
But are you at peace?
I'm certainly much more at peace than what I was, and I feel that over time, hopefully that will change. I mean, will improve.
When you consider how this personal journey of yours to seek the peace that you apparently have not had your whole life, or at least...
You know, I think that, that there is a little bit of a misconception there with regards to peace, because I've felt peace in my life. I've felt a lot of peace. So I don't want to say that I haven't experienced peace in my life, but these points of conflict have occurred, and that has made things very difficult, and I couldn't go through that again. I couldn't do it.
So in seeking the peace in this area of
Right.
your life,
Right.
certainly you've felt peace in other areas at other times, but in this particular area, which is so central to your very being,
Absolutely.
in seeking that peace, it is clear that your wife is in turmoil. How do you get through that excruciating situation for the both of you?
I really feel like time is the only thing that can do it. I mean, I was talking with a friend yesterday, and we talked about Elizabeth's ordeal, and I thought back to how life could never go back to what it was before, but there was a new normal. And so I'm hoping that there will be a new normal moving forward. I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to take time, and you know, and I respect, you know, my family and Lois's wishes, whatever those are. You know, I mean, I look at myself, and I recognize that, you know, I'm the cause of this pain. I have to also think, I mean, I'm so grateful for my family, but I also wonder if I had grown up in this time, in this age, would I have married? You know, and I don't know that. I mean, I'm so grateful for my children. That has been, for those who don't experience having children in their lives, I think it's one of life's wonderful and very challenging things, but I just think that it brings so much meaning and so much joy and so much happiness. I've had this saying that you know, the greatest blessing in life are those we loved, those that we love, and I truly feel that. So I think without being able to give of yourself and love others, you know, you're not going to get that love back that I feel brings the true meaning of life to you.
As you look back on the saga of your family,
Yes.
and you have no doubt sat and thought, why? Why was Elizabeth taken? Why did she come back safely? Why did we get involved in advocacy for missing and exploited children? And now this new chapter
Yes.
in that narrative, why all of this has happened.
Yes.
As you contemplate that, what do you feel inside?
You know, I've had some people in the past say, well, you must have chosen in the pre-existence to accept taking this on, and I'm just sitting there, oh my gosh.
Who would have done that, truthfully?
Yes, so I think that is something that is, I honestly can't answer that one for you. I just think that things happen in life. I mean, I remember thinking following Elizabeth's return of what we had experienced during that time, and also hearing other people's stories. And I mean, ours had so much media and so much attention that it became kind of almost bigger than life, versus I hear and see these other experiences that people are going through, and I feel in many cases that their experience is harder than what we went through. And I say that because I felt like, I mean, during that ordeal, one of the things that Lois and I held on to was knowing that Elizabeth would always be our daughter. She would always be there, whether it was in this life or in the hereafter. And that gave us strength, and truly, I mean, one of the things that is really heartbreaking is that during that ordeal, we really leaned on each other. We really had to lean on each other for our strengths, to bolster each other up when we had a hard time, when we had a hard day, when things weren't going well. We would really rest on each other, and so I mean, I was really grateful for that.
As you were coming out, you called each one of your 6 children individually.
Yes.
And told them that not only are you gay, but that you and their mother were divorcing. As that process was unfolding, was there a point, at any point in those conversations, when you thought to yourself, boy, maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all?
No, it really wasn't. I don't know that Lois thought that I would go in and call them, because we had this conversation the day before and basically went 24 hours not talking. And I heard her, we didn't sleep that night, I'm sure. And I heard her get up and go into her study, and we talked about how could I be gay. The stake president told me that I wasn't, the therapist told me that I wasn't, and I said, there's only really 2 people that know, and that is God and myself. And so she said, fine, well, go tell the kids. And I don't know that she thought I would go do that, but I went in there, and coming out and the church issue, I didn't see anything but us getting a divorce. And as I, talked to the kids, I was at such a point that I had tried, and I had tried, and I had tried, and I had tried to death to try to, find a way of reconciling myself, of being able to move forward in a positive way, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't find a way. Even at that point, I said to Lois, I said, I'm still willing to, try. We went on for another 6 months. I went to 3 stake presidents. I went to a number of bishops. I went to therapists. I feel like I didn't want to look back and say, Ed, you've made the biggest mistake of your life. And that is something that, people will be critical of me over, and I can't help that. I have to live for myself. I can't live for somebody else. They have not walked in my shoes. They don't know what I've experienced, the struggles that I've had, how I've tried, and unfortunately, people can think whatever they think. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily the way that it was. And so there's so many things that I can be positive about the church and what it did bring to my life, and how, how blessed I have been in so many ways. But I've come to the point that I have.
Many Latter-day Saints consider that the doctrines of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are embedded in their souls, part of their DNA, who they are. And I take it that you were in that category as well.
Absolutely.
Even now, as you contemplate the core beliefs of the gospel of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, tell me, is there a separation? Do you still consider yourself a Latter-day Saint? Do you still believe some of the core beliefs of the church?
Certainly. I was talking with somebody the other day, and I said, well, whether outwardly I have, changed and moved somewhere else, inwardly, this is what I was brought up with. This is, that you've got all your subconscious that has always been this way, and not just been this way, but been very, very strong. I mean, there was never a job that I remember turning down in the church. I mean, the first time I turned one down was this past year when they asked us to extend our inner city mission, and I just felt that I couldn't. But I do absolutely feel that there are some things in the church that I can't agree with, but there are many things that I can, and I'm grateful for those. Those have brought me a lot of joy and a lot of peace, and so I can really be thankful and grateful to the church for those things.
Are you still a member of the church?
I still have a record as of the moment. Maybe I won't hear. But officially I'm still on the rolls of the church.
And do you attend the church? Or describe your relationship with the church right now?
Funny you should bring that up, because this afternoon I had my branch president call me and say that he wanted to meet with me. I've actually found I don't attend church every week. In March, I kind of stopped going, and I actually started going to different churches and attending different meetings. I still feel a strong need to have spiritual growth in my life. I feel that is something that is important to me, and I try to work on that. I still pray. I still, ask for the Lord's direction in my life, and ask for His help in finding peace.
Do you feel like your prayers are being answered?
I do. I do feel like they are being answered. And, to all of Lois's family, who I've not spoken a word to because I think Lois didn't want me to talk with them, I truly love them all. They have been wonderful, wonderful people that I have, thoroughly enjoyed that relationship. And I'm sorry that it's come to what it has, but I do have a great love for them. And I just feel like I have received so many blessings in my life.
What does the future hold for you? Do you have any idea the path that you are on now, where it is going, and where you will wind up?
I really don't know. I don't know. I take it a day at a time and try to be positive and try to. I still care a lot about people.
Are you romantically involved?
I date, if that's what you're asking. I do date. Yes, I do. I'm hoping that I'll find somebody that I'll be very happy with, and I know that sounds really hard to a lot of people, and can only imagine what they think. But I can't live for them. I have to live for myself, and so.
You and your family have been the focus of not only a great deal of attention over the past 17 years, but also the subject of millions of people's prayers. And now with this new development, this new chapter beginning in your life and in your family's saga, what would you say to those people who have exerted so much spiritual effort in your family's direction?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was talking with my sister the other day, and she said, "Oh, I saw your mother-in-law," or my ex-mother-in-law, and she said, "Well, I pray for Ed all the time." And I just, it just brought me to tears. She's a wonderful lady, and I'm grateful for all the prayers. I still need them. I still need them.
We all do.
Yes, we all do. May I make one last comment
You sure
that I feel very strongly about, and that is, I feel that there is a huge lack of understanding, as I stated earlier, about what it means to be gay. And there's still this controversy going on whether you're born that way or whether it's a learned behavior. You know, for me, I'm sitting there, where in the world did I ever want to learn that? If anything, I wanted to, you know, get away from that. I mean, it's painful. It causes nothing but trauma, as far as I can tell. And so I hope people can have some compassion and understanding. I hear about, you know, LGBTQ kids that are kicked out of their houses. Hopefully that's happening less and less. But for heaven's sake, you know, the world is such a much better place when we love each other and when we care. And if there's a problem there, there's a problem there. And there may never be a cure. I mean, it's kind of like cancer or I mean, someone could say that it's cancer or it's a disease, but I mean, it's like...
Is that how you feel?
No, I don't feel that isn't how I feel. I feel that, you know, that is something that you have and that it's part of your DNA, or I've heard a lot of different comments about what it is, but I mean, for me, I really did not want to be that way. When I think of growing up, you know, when we moved from California up here, if you crossed your legs like this, you were gay. Or you weren't gay, you were a fag or queer or whatever. Or if you held your hands wrong, or if you said this or that word. And boy, did I not want to be that way. Yeah. I mean, I, you know, did everything I could to not...
extreme, yeah.
To that extreme. So I just feel, you know, that there needs to be more understanding and acceptance and love. I mean... I think love is so important, and I hate to hear about any suicides. It was interesting to me as I was speaking with a therapist in the past 6 months. He said to me, he said, you know, Ed, with as many youth as we have that are committing suicide, and there's a much greater peace when you go into being LGBTQ, and you know, there's so much more conflict there and other problems. But the therapist said to me, he says, Ed, you just don't know that when you track that up to someone your age, someone that's older, that rate of suicide doubles. Mm-hmm. And I can understand. I mean, getting to the point of just you know, not wanting to accept yourself, of hating yourself, of, you know, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be cured? Why can't I, you know, stop this? And
were you ever suicidal?
You know, there were certainly a couple of times where I felt like it would be easier to be dead than to be alive.
In your adult life?
In my adult life,
years.
Yes, yes.
Mm. And now?
I am finding peace. I'm trying to love myself, because I think as the first great commandment, you know, or the second, love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, if you can't love yourself, then, and I mean, I've tried to love myself over the years, but there have been parts that I've absolutely hated, and I'm trying to come to peace with those and be able to move forward and accept myself. So.
And you feel like you're making progress?
I feel like I'm making progress that way.
All right. Ed Smart, father of Elizabeth Smart, advocate for missing and exploited children, and perhaps LGBTQ advocate in the future. Thank you so much for being part of 3 Questions.
Thank you for having me on, Bob.